On the 22nd of December 2017, Republicans furthered a 100-year-old argument by passing a tax bill that will ultimately cost $1.5 trillion, which is a lot of dollars. Hi, internets, I'm Ross. This is the Talk Better Project. Part 3 is always about the history behind the topic. Republicans passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, but it is just the most recent step in a very long journey of a very long conversation. That conversation is about the economy. But what is the economy? It's not the government, it's not citizens, it's not corporations or businesses, it's not sales or products, goods or services, it's not taxation or investments, money or jobs, but it's kind of all of those things. The economy is a guess at how much wealth is in the nation, where the wealth is coming from, and where it's going, and how well and how quickly and in what products. It's very, very confusing. Which is why the conversation has been going on for so long. We find it really hard to describe the economy. But not only that, we actually fight over how to talk about the economy. For instance, we don't even know if it's more like a trained horse with a saddle or a hungry, angry, wild elephant. So it sounds like a pretty strange thing to fight about, but we do. Because if it's the one, someone who knows what they're doing could handle it with training and guidance. But if it's the other, you better get out of the way and let it do its thing. But we don't even know which one it is. So making rules for or about the economy is really dang difficult. But it shouldn't surprise anyone who's watching this that not knowing something doesn't stop politicians from arguing about it. All that arguing comes down to one central question. What's the best way to expand the economy? How do we get more stuff, create more wealth, find more jobs inside of this country? On one side, find ways for the government to spend lots of money on public works, on infrastructure, on increased employment, and on defense spending. Or on the other hand, find ways to keep more money in the hands of people who can do something with it. Hire new people, invest in new equipment, build more factories. Imagine that you own a business. If times get tough, which would you prefer? Would you rather that the government hire you to build a new road? Or would you rather pay less in taxes so that you can hire a new employee? Would you rather during tough times that the government issue grants so that you can research new ways to develop new products? Or would you rather pay less in sales taxes so you can make more sales? If you want the government to do more during a tough time, then you might be inclined to think of the economy like that saddled horse, something that we can control. But if you want the government to do less during a tough time, then maybe you're inclined to think of the economy like that angry elephant. We just have to let it run its course. But the horse-elephant comparison is mine, and it's not a very good one. Two guys you might have heard of that had a much better way of debating all of this were Friedrich Hayek and John Maynard Keynes. They're usually seen as the two grandfathers of each side of this argument. Keynes probably would have been on the side of the government buying a new road, and Hayek probably would have been on the side of cutting taxes. But full disclosure, it is way more complicated than that. Both of those men were born before 1900, and in their lifetimes, Hayek published something like 25 books, Keynes something like 40. Multiply that by about 100 years, multiply that by a national economy that's something like 17 times bigger, multiply that by all the writers, professors, students, and books about economics since, and it's safe to say we really don't know who is right just yet. Now, this whole horse-elephant divide might sound somewhat familiar to you because recently a lot of people in talking about the Republican tax plan have been referencing trickle-down economics. But I want to talk about that. The year is 1932, and a man named Will Rogers didn't care for President Herbert Hoover's plan to get the country out of the Great Depression. Rogers was worried that the plan helped the rich people and larger banks more than it helped poor people and small banks. Rogers was the first to make the comparison. Does money act like water? He said that Hoover put money at the top in the hopes that it would trickle down to the needy. Mr. Hoover was an engineer. He knew that water trickled down. But he didn't know that money trickled up. Give it to the people at the bottom, and the people at the top will have it before night anyhow, but it will at least have passed through the poor fellow's hands. Thus, trickle-down was born. The basic definition of trickle-down is anything that seems to give large corporations and rich individuals more money, or let them keep their money before taxes, which theoretically should grow the economy because it lets them hire more people and pay those people more. Generally speaking, Democrats are opposed to trickle-down, and Republicans tend to be in favor. But there's a problem. Trickle-down is just an idea. That's all that it is. It isn't a thing. It's not an actual policy. It's just a very, very broad label. I'm going to make kind of a weird example here. Let's say you and I are debating cars. You're trying to get me to say what my perfect road car is. If I never name a car and instead just keep talking about my dream car and how fast and how sleek and how powerful it is, you'd probably get annoyed. But maybe you would just turn around and tell people that my idea of a dream car is slow, ugly, and weak, because I never said what that car is. It's kind of a weird example, I know, but that's basically what trickle-down is. Democrats take parts of a tax plan that they don't like, put a negative emotional spin on it, and label it trickle-down. And then Republicans just take some vague ideas about taxation that they want to defend and do the same thing. Now, to be clear, Republicans don't use that specific term quite as often as Democrats do. Nevertheless, the fact remains that there's no scientific or economic policy that covers all of trickle-down. And so anyone who attacks or supports that notion is just making up or tearing down dream car arguments. Now, with this tax bill going around right now, something else you might have heard thrown around is Reaganomics. Now, Reaganomics gets a little bit closer to an actual policy that you can point to and talk about. Generally speaking, Democrats think it's the worst, and Republicans think it's the best. The long story short is this. In 1980, the US was financially in one of the worst places it had been since the Great Depression. Republican Ronald Reagan was president from 1981 to 1989, and during his term, the recession did end. Reaganomics is a perfect example of why economics is so freaking hard to talk about. The problem really comes down to we don't have a bunch of parallel universes where in each universe we make one and only one change and then come back a few years later to compare them to one another. If we did have those parallel universes, then we would be able to connect every effect with one cause. We would be able to know what works and what doesn't. Unfortunately, we live in one universe where everything happens all at once and there's all sorts of causes and all sorts of effects. The fun thing about economics is there's no certainty, but plenty of theories. And the super fun thing about politics is that everyone loves choosing their favorite theory and pretending there's perfect certainty. Republicans love pretending that President Reagan did one and only one thing: cut taxes. And to be fair, he did do that. During his term, the top tax rate dropped from 70% to 28%, and the corporate tax rate dropped from 46% to 40%. So Republicans love believing that the best way out of any recession: cut taxes. This sort of overlooks the fact that government spending also increased by 2.5% every year under his administration, which is huge. And the government was making much less money, thanks to cut taxes, so they had to borrow more. The federal debt tripled under his administration from nearly $997 billion to $2.85 trillion. Democrats love pointing to that and saying that that's what saved the recession. But again, we don't know. So it's this lack of parallel universes, which is why we don't even know if we can control our economy like our horse, or if we should just stand back and get out of its way like our elephant. We had this debate after the Great Depression in the 30s. We had it after the Second World War. In the 60s, under the Johnson and Nixon administrations. In the 80s, under the Reagan administration. 90s, under the Bush administration. Twice. And we had it a few weeks ago. People who want to get elected will tell you that fixing the economy is simple. I disagree. Economists spend their entire lives researching, debating, writing, and thinking about this. And they'll always be the first to say that this crap is complicated. My words. So that's my warning, but it's also my encouragement. You can learn about this stuff. It's not secret. And unless you want to spend your life led along by the nose by politicians and their dream car arguments, you should. I've left some links to some awesome podcasts and really interesting web resources in the description below the video as a place just to start from. Economic debates are different from political debates, and it's only politicians who are going to try to make you think they're the same simple thing. Here's my point. How to go about handling the economy is a very old question, and some brilliant men and women have spent a really long time thinking about it. Respect its complexity, and don't give time to people who don't respect it. The economy isn't a simple thing, like religion. Now, religion, that's an easy topic. It's simple. See, thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, please consider sharing the video. If you really liked it, maybe you can head over to Patreon and join these folks and help me make it. Thanks. See you around. Next time on the Talk Better Project. The political parties in the US had a field day with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Let's talk about the politics behind the discussions. During his administration, the top tax rate We had it in the 80s under the water to money. Or does water pay them more? All right. We're going to tell you that and we had it a few weeks ago. That was a good take. Who just want to... He worried that the plan... Come on. Thank you. That we really don't know.